She watches you while you speak. Not your words. Your posture. Your pace. The way you hold silence. You think attraction is built through confession. Through intensity. Through how much you reveal. You lean forward. You explain. You prove it. You offer more than was requested. You call it honesty. She calls it information. And information is leverage. You were taught that love is demonstrated through excess. Excess attention. Excess reassurance. Excess availability. But excess lowers value. Not because affection is weak. Because predictability erases tension. And tension is the engine of desire. This is not romance. This is a response. Human beings respond to perceived authority. Authority is not volume. It is containment. Notice the man who does not rush to fill silence. Notice the one who does not over-explain his intentions. Notice the one who does not chase clarity when ambiguity appears. He is not indifferent. He is governed. Governance is attractive because it signals control. Control over impulse. Control over reaction. Control over need. Need is detectable. You cannot hide it. It slips into tone. Into micro movements. Into timing. When you text immediately every time. When you cancel your plans at the first request. When you adjust your standards to maintain proximity. You believe you are demonstrating commitment. You are demonstrating dependency. Dependency shifts power. Power does not disappear. It transfers. The one who needs less controls pace. This is not cruelty. It is a structure. Machiavelli observed princes. He studied courts. He watched alliances form and dissolve. He understood something most romantics ignore. People respect what they cannot easily command. If you are easily commanded, you will not be deeply respected. You fear that restraint appears cold. You fear that boundaries appear distant. But distance creates perspective. Perspective creates curiosity. Curiosity sustains attraction. When you are always available, you are never anticipated. When you are always agreeable, you are never challenged. And without challenge, there is no polarity. Polarity creates charge. Charge creates desire. This is why overgiving fails. You give before value is established. You invest before commitment is signaled. You offer emotional intimacy before trust is earned. You accelerate the bond. Acceleration feels intoxicating. It also feels unstable. Intensity without structure produces anxiety. She feels it. Not consciously. But her nervous system detects imbalance. You have centered her too quickly. When someone becomes your emotional axis early, you reveal vulnerability without foundation. Vulnerability is powerful only when chosen, not when compelled. Compelled vulnerability feels like pressure. Pressure creates retreat. You interpret retreat as confusion. It is a calculation. She is assessing whether you are governed by emotion or anchored in self-command. Self-command is rare. Most men oscillate between detachment and overexposure. Both signal instability. The first signals avoidance. The second signals hunger. Hunger distorts perception. You stop evaluating her character. You start strategizing how to secure approval. Approval seeking is visible. Even when you mask it with confidence. True confidence does not negotiate its core. It listens. It observes. It decides. It does not perform. Performance exhausts you because it is unsustainable. You maintain a version of yourself that is optimized for her gaze. Her laughter becomes a reward. Her distance becomes punishment. Now she holds unconscious leverage. Because your mood fluctuates based on her responses. This is how emotional dependency forms. Not through love. Through imbalance. The imbalance begins when you abandon your internal authority. Internal authority is simple. You have standards. You have direction. You have commitments that existed before her. When you suspend them to secure connection, you communicate hierarchy. You have placed her above your mission. Mission generates gravity. Gravity pulls. When you orbit her instead, you lose center. The center is attractive. Orbit is desperate. Desperation rarely announces itself loudly. It hides inside over-politeness. Inside constant reassurance. Inside exaggerated understanding. You tolerate behavior that conflicts with your values because you fear loss. Loss terrifies you more than self-abandonment. So you choose self-abandonment. Repeated enough, resentment forms. Resentment leaks through sarcasm. Through subtle tests. Through emotional volatility. Now she feels instability. You blame her inconsistency. But the inconsistency began when you abandoned your own frame. Frame is not dominant. It is coherence. Your words align with your actions. Your pace aligns with your principles. When she challenges a boundary, you do not react with anger. You respond with clarity. Clarity reduces drama. Drama thrives on ambiguity. Ambiguity is seductive early. It becomes toxic later. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Most misinterpret this as cruelty. It is about respect. Fear in this context is not terror. It is recognition of consequence. When your boundaries have no consequence, they are suggestions. Suggestions are ignored. If you say you value respect but tolerate disrespect, you dilute authority. Authority diluted becomes negotiable. And when you become negotiable in your core, attraction erodes. People are drawn to those who seem self-contained. Self-containment signals that your emotional survival does not depend on them. This removes pressure. Paradoxically, removing pressure increases desire. You were taught that reassurance sustains connection. In excess, reassurance communicates insecurity. Insecurity invites testing. Testing reveals cracks. Cracks reduce perceived stability. Stability is erotic. Not because it is exciting. Because it feels safe. Safety allows surrender. No one surrenders to chaos. When you overinvest early, you create chaos. You attach expectation to interaction. Expectation produces subtle demands. She senses them. Even if you never speak them. You want more time. More validation. More exclusivity. Wanting is not wrong. But when wanting turns into silent entitlement, it shifts tone. Tone is everything. The man who governs himself does not demand through hints. He states. He observes the response. He adjusts. He does not beg for alignment. He assesses it. Assessment restores power. Most relationships fail not because of lack of affection. They fail because of asymmetrical investment. One chases. One evaluates. Chasing reduces value. Evaluation increases it. When you chase, you communicate scarcity. Scarcity of options. Scarcity of identity. Scarcity of self-sufficiency. Scarcity triggers caution. Abundance triggers intrigue. Abundance does not mean many partners. It means inner fullness. You have a life that does not pause for validation. You have goals that are not negotiable. You have emotional regulation that does not collapse under delay. Delay is a test. Not always intentional, but revealing. If a delayed message disrupts your peace, you are externally governed. Externally governed men seek internal control through others. They attempt to control outcomes because they cannot control themselves. This is the inversion. The more you try to secure her through pressure, the more you expose your instability. The more you anchor in yourself, the less you need to secure. Needlessness shifts dynamic. It signals that you choose her, not require her. Choice is powerful. The requirement is heavy. No one wants to be responsible for your emotional equilibrium. They want to be desired, not needed for survival. This is where many misstep. They confuse emotional availability with emotional dependency. Availability is openness. Dependency is attachment to outcome. Outcome fixation produces anxiety. Anxiety distorts behavior. You check your phone repeatedly. You analyze tone changes. You craft responses to maintain interest. Interest maintained through calculation is fragile. Interest maintained through presence is durable. Presence requires you to be rooted. Rooted men do not flinch at uncertainty. They allow space. Space creates room for pursuit. When you eliminate space, you eliminate pursuit. She does not chase what is already secured. Mystery is not manipulation. It is measured revelation. You do not expose your entire emotional landscape at once. You unfold gradually. Gradual revelation maintains tension. Tension sustains engagement. You were told vulnerability builds connection. It does. But only when framed by strength. Unframed vulnerability feels like collapse. Collapse triggers caretaking or withdrawal. Neither builds desire. Desire builds when vulnerability appears as a choice, not a compulsion. The man who can walk away without bitterness holds quiet power. Walking away is not a threat. It is a boundary in action. If she withdraws respect, you withdraw access. Calmly. Without spectacle. Spectacle signals wounded ego. Calm signals principle. Principle commands respect. Respect precedes attraction. Attraction without respect fades. Respect without attraction can transform into attraction. This is the structural truth. You seek chemistry. But chemistry without structure burns fast. Structure without chemistry builds slow heat. Slow heat lasts. The man who texts less is not indifferent. He is engaged elsewhere. Engagement elsewhere signals value. Value attracts. Overavailability communicates surplus. Surplus lowers urgency. Urgency intensifies desire. You see now. It is not romantic. It is responsive. People respond to signals of strength. Strength here is emotional discipline. Discipline is not repression. It is control of expression. You feel deeply. You choose what to display. Choice restores hierarchy. Hierarchy does not mean superiority. It means order. Order calms. Calm stabilizes. Stability magnetizes. You do not need to dominate. You need to govern. Govern your impulses. Govern your reactions. Govern your narrative. When you react to her every shift, you relinquish narrative control. When you respond from the center, you shape pace. Pace determines momentum. Momentum determines trajectory. Most men surrender trajectory at the first sign of affection. They rush to secure it. Security forces become suffocating. Let the connection breathe. Breath requires space. Space requires tolerance of uncertainty. Uncertainty tests ego. Ego wants immediate affirmation. Authority tolerates delay. Authority does not interpret delay as rejection. It interprets it as data. Data informs decisions. Decision reinforces identity. Identity anchored in self does not fracture under silence. Silence becomes neutral. Neutrality preserves dignity. Dignity is attractive. Not because it is flashy. Because it is stable. She senses whether you are stable. She senses whether your world collapses without her input. If it does, pressure builds. Pressure erodes desire. Desire thrives in choice. If she feels free, she leans in. If she feels responsible for your happiness, she steps back. Responsibility kills romance. Choice sustains it. So treat her not as a savior. Not as judge. Not as a validation source. Treat her as an addition to an already directed life. Directed lives create confidence. Confidence without aggression creates magnetism. You do not posture. You do not perform. You exist with intention. Intention is felt, even when unspoken. And when she tests, through distance, through sarcasm, through comparison, you do not crumble. You do not escalate. You remain consistent. Consistency builds trust. Trust builds depth. Depth builds loyalty. Loyalty emerges from respect. Respect emerges from self-governance. Not from flattery. Not from compliance. Not from emotional flooding. The prince who begged for loyalty lost it. The prince who embodied order retained it. In relationships, the same architecture applies. Govern yourself. And watch how perception shifts. She stops seeing you as an option. She begins seeing you as an anchor. Anchors do not chase ships. Ships return to anchors. Quietly. Because stability is rare. And rarity is desired. You thought they wanted devotion. They were measuring whether you could govern it.